In this video, we'll show how you can directly insert data into a SQL database when the user submits a form in TransForm. So in this particular video, we're going to work with this form here called people. So you can see it's a simple form that has first name, last name, and city at the top level. And then it has a data group for children where you can enter the name and the age of all of the children for this person. So, and of course, because it's a data group, you can enter as many children as you want. And then it also has another data group over here called pets, where you can enter as many pets as you want for this particular person. So the pets data group also has a field called name and age. So in this particular case, since this form has two data groups, when we insert the data into a SQL table, we're going to need actually three tables. We're going to need one table for the top level fields, then another table for the children, and then another table for pets. So we'll need three different tables to insert the data into the SQL database. So the actual code, the definition of our onSubmit event is done over here. We go to the home section here and we go to the define the onSubmit event, and we can see that the onSubmit event is defined using a JSON definition. So in some cases the JSON is pretty simple, so it's easy enough to just type it in over here. But in the case of the send database to a SQL send data to a SQL database action, the JSON is more complex, and it's nice to be able to use a Genie or a wizard to help build the JSON definition. So I'm going to go now to Alpha Anywhere, and you can see here in Alpha Anywhere I'm at the Web Control Panel, and I'm going to go to Tools, More, TransForm Utilities, and then I'm going to go to the builder for the onSubmit event. So I'll start out here by just fetching the existing definition from TransForm Central. So, and I'll go there and I'll fetch it. So these are the actions that I currently have defined for my onSubmit event. And let's go now and create a brand new event. So we'll go here and we'll say add a new action, and I'll choose send to a SQL database, and then I'll start defining this action. So the first thing I need to do is specify which TransForm form this action applies to. So we said earlier that we're going to use this action for our form called people. So there's our people form, so we'll go ahead there and choose that. The next thing that we can do is choose the condition under which the data will be inserted into the SQL database. So we might want to only insert the data into the SQL database if a field in the form has a particular value. So we can go into this condition builder here and define any JavaScript code that references data in the form or the metadata, and then returns either a true or false value. If it's true, we'll execute the action. If it's false, we'll skip the action. So next thing we need to do is specify the connection string to our SQL database. So in this case, I've got a MySQL database that is currently hosted at GoDaddy, and if we look at this MySQL database over here, we can see that currently there's only one table in the database. So we now need to specify the connection string that allows us to connect to that GoDaddy database, and this connection string needs to work from the perspective of TransForm. It's not important whether you can connect to this database from your desktop computer where you're using the TransForm builder. It's only important that you can connect to it from TransForm, which is running in Alpha Cloud. So I'm going to go here and build my connection string. I can either insert a blank template, or I can start with a connection string that was defined in Alpha Anywhere, which is an easier way to do it. So I'll go there and then click OK. And I can see now this is my connection string that points to my GoDaddy database. So you can see here are all the credentials for my connection string. So I'm going to pause now and pick this up in the next video. So we're continuing now showing how we can use the wizard in Alpha Anywhere to set up the onSubmit action to insert data into a SQL database. And the next thing that we have to do is define the table map. So recall that this form has top level fields, and then it has a data group for children, and then another data group for pets. So we'll need a total of 3 tables, and we'll need to map the fields in the form to tables in the SQL database. So if we bring up the table map builder, we can see that we have the 3 sections of the form, the top level fields, and the top level fields need to be mapped to a table in the SQL database. So if I open up the selector here, we can see that currently there aren't any tables in the SQL database. There are no existing tables that are appropriate, so that's not a problem. We're going to just create matching tables that are appropriate for this form. So we'll go ahead here and hit cancel, and then we'll say we'd like to actually create tables, and we'll say we want to create a table, and we'll use default values for everything. And if there is an existing table with the same name as the form, which is the default name of the table, we'll just overwrite that. Then if we go to children, we'll say we want to create tables there as well. We'll overwrite existing. Then we'll go to pets, and we'll go there, and we'll say overwrite existing. And now we'll actually execute the SQL commands to create the table in our SQL database. So we'll go ahead there. And now Alpha Anywhere has written the SQL commands to create the table. So here's the top level table, and here is our create table statement. You can see that not only do we have the fields, first name, last name, and city, but we also have fields for the metadata, which is the name of the person who filled in the field and the name of the form itself, etc. So these are the so-called metadata fields. Then for the children data group, here is our table. And then for our pets data group, here is our table. So we are free to modify this SQL before we execute it. But now when we go ahead and execute it, we'll see now that the results of the SQL commands come back. So we can see that we got errors for each of the drop commands because our database didn't actually even have those tables. But for the create, we got successes on all of them. So if we go back now to Navicat to look at our SQL database, and we just go ahead here and do a refresh, we'll see that we now have the tables that were created: people, children, and people pets. So this is the table for the children data group, and this is the table for the pets data group. If we were to open up these tables, we'll see that they're currently empty. There's no records in them. So now that we've created these tables, we can close this out now. Click OK now, go back to our builder, and we can now go and complete the builder here. So the field map allows us to specify the map between fields on our form and fields in the table. So in this case, we don't need a field map, because we built the tables explicitly to match the form definition. But had we chosen existing tables in the table map, we could go to the field map and specify that, for example, the first name field maps to some other field in the table that this top data group, or the top level fields in the form, map to. So in this case, we don't need to specify a field map. And then we're going to specify here that the field in our form that contains the primary key, we'll just use default, and then we'll just use form instance ID again for the field in the form that contains the form instance that contains the primary key. And this is the field in the table where the primary key will be inserted. So this is going to basically be default. So let's pause now and pick this up in the next video. So we're continuing now with our video showing how the onSubmit event in TransForm can insert data into a SQL database when the user submits data from the mobile device. And now that we've finished our definition, we can go ahead here and click OK, and then click OK here to push the data back to TransForm Central. So this is the JSON definition of the onSubmit event. You can see here's the original actions that were there: send, mail, post data, etc. And then at the very end, we can see here's our new action that we've just added called send to SQL database, and it's for this form called people. So here is the here is the definition of that event. So we can go ahead now and click save, and this will upload our definition back to TransForm Central. And now that the data has been saved back in TransForm Central, we can bring up our phone, enter a new record, and check to see whether the data gets submitted into the SQL database. So we're now looking at my iPhone 7, which I'm reflecting onto the screen here so I can show it. And let's go and add a new instance of this people form. So I'll go here and tap on this add form button, which will bring up the list of available form types. I'll tap on people, and now I can start adding a new record. So I'll pause here while I add some data for a new record. So we've added some data now. We've added a new record. We've added a person, Elliot King, who lives in Denver. He's got 2 children, Charles and Anne, and he's got 3 pets, Blake, Curly, and Sleepy. So let's go ahead now and submit this data. So, and then we'll go to the SQL database and see the records that have been added. So go ahead and then click OK. And now we'll go to Navicat and look at our SQL database. So if we go here and go to the people table and then do a refresh, we see there that Elliot King has been added. If we go to the children tab and then do a refresh, we see that Charles and Anne have been added. And then if we go to pets and then do a refresh, we see that Blake, Curly, and Sleepy have been added. So what we've shown over here is that when I edit or insert a new row in a form, or a new instance of a form, or update an instance of a form, that data gets written immediately to the SQL database. Thanks very much for watching.